Right, and I read about Chester Bennington,
And you don't know what else they're taking.
right.
People could be taking other things.
And the thing to me about Chester Bennington is that 41 years old, had 6 children, but he was a person that suffered with alcohol abuse, drug abuse, depression. So he had
factors.
issues.
Those are risk factors for suicide.
But I just kind of feel, with all those issues, the fact that he was so close to Chris Cornell might have been the last thing that puts him over the edge, because
Correct.
I think there's 2 things that really indicate that. Number one, he was so close to Chris Cornell that Chester Bennington sang Hallelujah at Chris Cornell's funeral. And then, and I think it's more than a coincidence that Chester Bennington took his own life on Chris Cornell's birthday.
I actually read on the AFSP website that that is one of the risk factors, is death of someone close to you by suicide. That is a risk factor. If you have if you see the warning signs, but these are risk factors, and that is a very high, that's a big risk factor. Someone close to you, and they were very close. And, substance abuse, you're talking about all these things that are, risk factors for suicide and, mental illness and depression. And these are the things that we really need to treat, and these are the things that are creating opioid dependence and creating alcohol, and self-harming behaviors, cutting, all of those type things. So we really, try to look at like at people when they're young. There's such a thing called the ACE studies that I've been reading about recently, and they say that early childhood trauma is so pervasive and so dangerous to our culture that it precipitates early death, obesity, diabetes, drug abuse. In fact, they're doing a longitudinal study on the people, the young children who got out of 9/11 from that daycare center. Half of the children have signs of post-traumatic stress syndrome, and half escaped without traumatic stress syndrome. The difference between the people, the youngsters who are thriving, is that they did not experience, any trauma prior to 9/11 before getting rescued. The children who were in a home with alcohol or divorce, fire, poverty, any of those things, if they had a trauma before 9/11, they're like 10 times, they're the ones, they're the subgroup that are having all kinds of symptoms of post-traumatic stress syndrome. So I thought that was extraordinarily interesting, meaningful.
Yeah.
That we have to start watching people when they're really young, and keep an eye on people and support each other like older cultures. It does take a village. And then, when we have these turning points like 13 and 20, and we're more alert to what we need to do to keep us all whole. We're spending billions of dollars on obesity, on lifestyle diseases, smoking, obesity, all these things, and we're losing good people. So
I want to get both Jackie and Taylor's thoughts on this. Something that I didn't talk about in the show, but we brought it up on Facebook. Recently, there was a case in Massachusetts that got national attention about a young girl that talked her boyfriend over the phone into taking his own life. He had reservations. He got out of the car. She urged him to get back into the car and take his own life. Jackie, thoughts?
I'm sorry, I can't even control myself with this one.
Let it go.
First of all, this young lady was obviously I'm not her therapist. I don't know her, but all I can say is what she did was a homicide.
And she was convicted.
Yeah, she was convicted. It's a crime. It's sadistic. There was something severely wrong with her, and no one. I just can't even imagine. I mean, most of us are sitting here saying, like, how can we help people not, talk to them and love them to stay healthy? And this young lady is so sadistic that this young man actually, and who was so fragile, took his own life. And I believe it was a certain homicide for my, and I'm like a pinko lefty, but that was a homicide to me. Taylor, what do you think?
I definitely don't think it's right in any way, even if the boyfriend didn't have suicidal thoughts or tendencies, but especially if he did, and most likely knowing that the girlfriend knew this, because they must have been close. I would have expected them to be. You can't even, it's...
And you know what the sick part about it was? Is that she perceived herself to be very unpopular. And in her sick, demented mind, she felt that she would be popular by playing the part of the grieving girlfriend. That's how badly she wanted attention and popularity. She figured that by doing this, that she'd get so much attention for being the grieving girlfriend, until some of her friends, told her, gave her messages on Facebook, which is sick.
That is blatantly psychotic, Howie. Right? Taylor, if somebody ever told you that they were feeling, upset or like any of these things, what would your response be?
I would never, ever tell them to go and do these things that they were thinking. I would tell other people, not other people,
You
but
try to get them help.
yeah.
And somebody said to me, it infuriated me. They said, well, he had tried to commit suicide before, so you really can't blame her. And I said, What are you talking about? I said, the fact that he was fragile and he was weak made it 10 times worse, because she took somebody so fragile and weak and preyed on his weakness and pushed him over the edge. That makes it worse.
I'm telling you, that's how I feel. It's really double. It's like evil, very sadistic, and that popularity was that important to her was very obviously crazy. I saw that and I was infuriated. And suicide is not a crime, and it's they say there's so many people attempt suicide. The people who do die by suicide, is such a small percentage compared to how many people actually attempt it. I've had hundreds of people tell me that they've attempted it. People I know have told me they attempted it when they were 10, when they were 14, when they were 18. Many women attempt suicide 4 times as much as men, but men are much more successful at it, unfortunately.
Especially, I think there's a stat that 25 military veterans take their life every single day.
At least. That's
a severe problem.
And we don't even know how they're dying by mixing medications, car accidents, homelessness, sores from homelessness. How many are taking drugs and drinking? We have really. I think there's probably hundreds. Dying a self-death. Lack of care, mental illness. Just recently, I don't think we've seen each other since then, but I think there's been 2 cases of people going to the VA and trying to get mental health help at the VA, and being rejected by the VA emergency room, and they go out to their car and shoot themselves or die by suicide. Right here in Northport, we've had one, and I think there was another one. They're going for help, they're being rejected, and they go right out to their car, and they take their lives. and I just don't get why we're not listening to people. And similarly, like with Taylor and the young people with sexual or gender identity issues or all of those issues, we need to take people seriously, especially the most fragile of us.
Absolutely.
We spend money on yachts and on boats and on tanks, and yet we're talking our beautiful children, our friends, our family. We're happy to spend money on anything, but a $20 copay for therapy session is a ripoff.
Absolutely. All right. I think we covered a lot in this segment, and in our next segment, we're going to talk about resources for people, and I also want to ask Jackie in the next segment the benefit of a therapy dog.
Oh, great.
Because Rocco and I, with your wonderful husband, had the good fortune of meeting your therapy dog at the LGBT event, and what a sweetheart. And we're going to talk about that in the next segment. The benefit of someone who lost a member and the benefit of a therapy dog, and why a therapy dog is so important to a family member. But we're going to talk about the benefit, the resources available to people in the next segment. So Taylor, thank you for contributing. Jackie, thank you. And we certainly touched on a lot in this segment. Thank you.